Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Content Alchemy. And this week we have another special guest for you. And before we get into that, I just want to mention that we will be taking a little bit of a break because it is the holiday season, and we will be hitting it again in 2025. You know, brand new content, new things for you to listen to, brand new guests. So it should be a lot of fun when we start getting into those episodes. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Today, we have Rick Preston on the show. And we've worked with Rick in the past. We love working with him. And I think this is a really fun conversation and a lot about, the theme of kind of like work-life balance, being able to go with the flow, understanding what producers do as well, which as a producer, I really appreciate that conversation. So there's a lot about the creation of that content as well in this episode. So a little bit of background on Rick. He is a creative leader with nearly 2 decades of experience in branding, storytelling, and team leadership. Rick began his career in 2006 at a creative agency and later worked at WSB-TV, Atlanta's local ABC affiliate, where he refined his skills in visual storytelling and broadcast production. In the years since, Rick has held pivotal roles at the Weather Channel, Applied Systems, and Change Healthcare, where he built a reputation for crafting compelling brand narratives and driving creative innovation. As the head of creative services, Rick now oversees a high-performing team, leading strategic initiatives that merge storytelling with design to elevate brands and engage global audiences. So a lot in there. Rick is, truly a professional, and we've really enjoyed working with him. So let's get into the conversation.
Awesome. And we're back. Hello, Rick. It's so good to be to have you join us today.
Hey, Shelby. So great to see you.
And Matt, of course. Hello, Matt.
Yes, hello. Hello, Shelby. The real story here is Shelby's stuck in Chicago right now. I'm still on the podcast.
Yeah. I was going to give a little explanation, but here it is. So I was in Columbus visiting Matt and some of our teams and having some meetings. And I was supposed to be flying back last night, and I got like a 3-hour delay or so. So as I was landing in Chicago, the flight that I was supposed to be on was leaving. So it was just a very fluid, I guess I should have been over there. So now I'm in Chicago for the day. And my internet here is just a little spotty, so I'll probably turn my camera off. But I will be here hanging out. But it looks like Matt is going to be leading this one. He'll be leading the charge.
I'm going to take charge. I'm going to take charge here. All right.
Well, Shelby, thanks so much for still making the time for me. I know that you're off out of your home base, so it's always fun when you're feeling like you got one hand tied behind your back.
Rick, I always have time for you, okay?
Appreciate that.
That kind of makes it sound like I keep Shelby tied to her desk all the time with one hand.
Today we have one hand free. It's nice.
All right, let's get into it here. All right, Rick, I want to start by let's hear a little bit about kind of how you got to where you are right now.
Sure. So I went to a film school in Orlando called Full Sail. That's my college career. Did film and video production studies, and then after graduation, spent a couple years working for a small agency, doing everything. It was a very small company, right? 5 people within the company, which included the husband-wife owner team. So I was doing everything from grabbing the camera and shooting to post-production to PA work. I mean, it didn't matter. Anything we needed to do to get the production done was sort of always fair game. From there, at that point, after a couple of years, it was like, okay, where does my career go from here? Loved the agency side, but working in a small agency, there was no real upward opportunity. So made the decision to jump to Atlanta, Georgia, where I joined WSB, the local ABC News affiliate here. I was hired as a hybrid photojournalist and / engineer. So I was doing their control room operations when I wasn't out in the field with a reporter shooting. Did that for about 5 or 6 years. Learned a ton of stuff. Learned how to deal with high pressure situations. Learned how to deal with very tight deadlines and fast turns. as is the case for most people, you kind of, once you meet a girl and you start wanting to settle down and have a family, the news lifestyle doesn't really jive with having a personal life. Anybody that's come from production knows exactly what I'm talking about. I moved to the Weather Channel thinking that might solve things, and same situation, so then ultimately decided to make the jump to corporate production. I went in-house corporate, and I started as a small software technology company as their in-house video producer. Then kind of just being in the right place at the right time, right? Contacts that I knew, networked with, jumped me to Change Healthcare, where I became their head of video production. A couple years in, I was then actually headhunted and recruited over to where I'm at now, Global Payments, where I started as their director of video and motion. And through a series of internal reorgs, I am now the head of creative services for all of internal and external communications and marketing. So I'm doing, I've got a team of designers, producers, videographers, all working under me with the shared common goal of creating anything we need from a content creation level for Global Payments as an enterprise.
Yeah.
It's been the ride.
Well, yeah, for sure. But like, it's so interesting that like, that's kind of what it takes. Like you have to go on that ride to get to that position,
It's very much, I'm here for the ride. Not to go too far back in history, but my senior year of high school, I moved from Miami, Florida to New Jersey. And that was really the catalyst. I kind of viewed that as life throws curveballs at you. An opportunity will land in your lap and you either can wallow in your own self-pity and woe's me, or you can embrace the opportunity and the change and make the most of it. And that's sort of how I've taken a perspective on my professional career. Opportunities arise. Things that you didn't expect to happen kind of come out of the woodwork. And you kind of have to take the leap of faith sometimes and hope for the best. And I've been lucky enough where things have landed well for me.
Rick, it's really interesting. Your background is so similar to mine because I went to film school and wasn't really sure what I was going to do after. I thought I was going to be a theorist. Really, I thought I was going to go and I was going to be a film professor and I was going to be a theorist and I just talk about movies all day. And I ended up kind of falling into production because it just wasn't a really when I was graduating, there wasn't a lot of open spots in a lot of these grad schools. So I just kind of fell more into production and I went and got my MFA after. So it's just kind of put me on a trajectory of more applied work, which has been really interesting. But that feels the same though of so many film school grads of, we just are all kind of along for the ride. We're all just kind of here ready to take whatever chances we can get. Yeah, I think, Rick, that actually, that just kind of bridges it. I'd love to hear a little bit about that just before we get really into things of, because we do have such similar backgrounds.
Sure.
What has that been like for you to just kind of go with the flow of things? I'm a very type A personality, so at first I was a little nervous about doing that, but I think it's something that I really respect out of other people.
Yeah, I think I definitely try to embrace opportunities when they arise, right? Hey, there's an opening on this team where you can learn a little more about the cinematography side of things, or hey, we're short staffed and can you fill in as a gaffer, right? And I think in the back of my mind, I've always sort of had the end goal initially, at least, of okay, I think I want to go the producer route, but I think there's so much that producers you should almost be forced to work in the below the line kind of situations, right? Be a PA, be a grip, shoot some stuff, really get a full foundational knowledge of everything you're doing before you can really step into that producer level role and go, okay, holistically, I know how to put a production on start to finish. I will be the first to tell you, right? It's the jack of all trades, but a master of none. I know enough in most areas to be dangerous, but I'm not the best lighter, out there. I'm not the best shooter. Um, there are people that dedicate their entire careers to that specific craft. I found real enjoyment in not pigeonholing myself in one area and really just looking at opportunities to kind of say, let's try something new. Let's explore what happens here. And it's true. You hear the old adage of like, as you grow in your career, it's not one singular ladder you climb. It's literally you jump to the next ladder, and it might be a lateral move. It might be a step back down, and then you climb again. Um, and I think it makes a more well-rounded career and gives you opportunities to have some real fun stories along the way, right? I've had the opportunity to work with some big name celebrities, and then I've had the opportunity to work with people that you've never heard of, and so that's what keeps me going every day is you never know what's next.
So based on the experience that you have, so early on, you're focused a little bit more as like a technician, I suppose, where you
Sure.
are kind of doing the work. And when you get to the position that you're in now, in-house, I imagine that now you kind of you still have to think about that side, but you also now have to think about the bigger, broader, like strategy side of things, the sales side of things. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, right, especially working where I am now, where it's a massive enterprise and everyone wants video, right? Video is now king. Um, but we're not going to make a video just for the sake of making a video, right? What's the story? What's the call to action at the end? There should be something driving. And coming from that technician background, it's like, sure, just tell me what you want. I'll go make it. But when do you stop and ask the question of why are we making this? What's the benefit? What's the ultimate outcome and goal that we're trying to do or trying to get to? And I think that's the crux of what has helped successfully bridge that gap or that transition is kind of being able to see the forest through the trees, and being able to kind of get that high level picture of, okay, they're trying to drive sales leads here. Got it. Now I can help tailor what we're trying to make to hit that end deliverable and end goal there. Um, I think it's lent itself well. Um, and then because you have experience doing the work, you're able to kind of translate between what a copywriter or just a general marketer might be asking for, or even a sales guy, and being able to translate what they're asking for into what that actually means for production speed. And I think that's hugely beneficial for anyone working in our industry.
Right. I think this is one of the like more interesting things that I see from a lot of companies is that there is that request where like, hey, we need to make video. I mean, obviously, as a video production company ourselves, we hear that a lot. But the thing is, once we really drill down to it, it's like, well, wait a minute, like why do you want video? And sometimes you hear like, I don't know. It's just everybody else is saying that we need
Yeah.
video, Um, and I don't know, like, was there a moment for you where you're like, I don't know, you go from already believing in video, because that's the thing that you kind of specialize in, to like, oh man, like this is now hugely valuable for the people that we're working with. Was there a moment of any sort that you had to make that connection?
Um, I don't know that I can pinpoint one specific moment. I think it was that eye-opening understanding, right? Like I said, right, is I started with a film and video production career or background from by way of schooling. I didn't have the marketing or the sales perspective of this is what a sales funnel looks like, and here's all the touch points from a sales professional's perspective. Well, now I can draw that parallel and go, okay, well, in a sales cycle, this is where a client testimonial might fit, or this is where we really need to start hitting them with demos. How do you optimize your production to streamline some of that as well, right? You don't want to constantly have your um, demo specialists kind of constantly getting booked for the same type of demo call, right? I want to kick the tires on your product under the hood. Well, what if we just produce a high quality video that says, hey, Matt, I see you're interested in this product. Watch this 5-minute overview. And then if you have questions, we can start to really dive in versus that high level 101. I think it optimizes their experience. It keeps your audience engaged, and it answers some of those basic questions that you're not having to field individually anymore. And I think that's where we provide the most value, working in partnership with marketing and sales teams.
Right. So what does that process typically look like for you right now? Like, I assume that there is, maybe it is the marketing team. I mean, you're dealing a lot with brand too. So like when these requests typically come in, like what does that look like, and how do you know when it's time for you to really get involved?
Yeah, I mean, so we use our project management tool. Doesn't matter which one you use, right? There's a million out there these days, but everything starts with that intake request. So anybody within the company says, I need a video. What are those initial questions that we need to know, right? Okay, what kind of video do you think you want? What are we talking about? What's that end goal? What is that call to action that we're talking about doing? That gives me a high level idea of ultimately what they're looking to accomplish. And then more from a consultative strategic approach, it's like, hey, you said you wanted a brand video, but really you're asking for a specific product promo, right? And it's being able to kind of guide the folks to where they actually should be looking, right? And it's not any fault of theirs. They don't know what they don't know, right? This isn't what they eat, breathe, and sleep. So it's being able to be that strategist and that partner with them to then deliver executionally what we're ultimately guiding towards. So it all starts with that intake. Then we do our kickoff calls, get a little more deep dive into the request. And then from there, it's okay, now let's start engaging our team. And I imagine most of your listeners know the general process, but it's, right, it's conception, scripting, storyboarding, the whole flow. There's so much more upfront work than people, I think, ever realize, especially when you're not working in production. It's like, well, what do you mean we're 6 weeks in and we're still only in pre-production? Well, yeah, because I'd rather spend the upfront time than getting caught where, oh, now I have to go reshoot something at the tune of thousands of dollars of added budget. So I'd rather kind of put in that upfront legwork to make sure that we're all in agreement. We know what that outcome is going to be, and that'll push us towards the expected end result.
That upfront work that you talk about, I feel like that's where you really separate people, right? When you have people that don't generally know the process, but they have a need, they just say, hey, I need this video. Maybe it's like the difference between the amateur and the professional here, where the amateur is like, okay, I can do that. I will do this now. I will move forward and go,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they're very well intentioned, but I feel like the professional takes a couple steps back and tries to look at the big picture before attacking something, right?
Sure.
So, the process that you're describing though, like it's very similar to how we work as an outside vendor. So, and I think you've done both, right? You've been outside, you've been inside.
Yep. I've worked, both sides of the fence.
Right.
I don't know that any one side is better.
That's what I was going to ask.
But I think there's definitely benefits to both.
Right. There definitely is. And I honestly, I think both sides sort of dream of doing the other all the time,
for sure.
right? Because the grass is always greener. But I guess I'm curious though, like, so being in-house now, at what point do you decide to look for outside help on any of the stuff that you're working on?
Yeah. I mean, right. So I'm lucky where I have a team of in-house designers, videographers that have a pretty in-depth level of experience that they can get most of what I need done. I consider it more of that, is this executional and we just need to kind of get it out the door, or is this what I would consider more of that high level design, right? Um, is it something that a brand video, for example, right? There's only so much an in-house team can actually do versus bringing in the outside agency that has the network of contacts, um, that has the ability to just kind of help take on that burden. Because while I have the high level production pieces that I need to do, brand videos, things like that, I've still got my business as usual that I need to keep running. So how do we balance that? And then how do you balance the opportunity so your internal team doesn't feel like they're getting stuck with that low level production work where they're just cranking out things? They're feeling like they're continuing to grow. As a leader within these creative teams, I think that's the hardest thing for us to balance, is making sure that we're fostering that curiosity and that growth for our team, but then meeting the expectations of the business, right? I have deadlines to hit. I have budget that I have to be within. I have stakeholders that get paid way more than I do, that everyone's got an opinion, right? So how do you manage those expectations, those opinions, and ultimately create something that everyone's proud of and that we can continue to scale? Because ultimately all of it's going to be, we have finite resources regardless of where you're working, whether you're working with a $10,000 budget or $1 million budget. It doesn't matter. We all kind of have the same problems at the end of the day.
100%. Um, so I guess, like, going through this process, I mean, obviously with how budgets are, you generally do want to, use your team first. And I love what you say, because I feel like that's one of the biggest issues that I've seen with kind of in-house work, is that you would get just kind of a monotony of the exact same stuff every single day. You would see that they're awarding work to companies that you really, really wanted to take on, right? For me, I think that was one of the biggest things for me once I saw that, and I was like, I want to do that. Like, why would you, like, so I think that it does pose a bit of kind of a conundrum for a leader in this situation, because you're trying to navigate all these different things, but also at the end of the day, you want a happy team, right?
Sure.
Do you feel like that's really difficult to navigate, or have you, like, kind of found a flow through that?
I mean, I would say that's probably one of the most difficult things that as a leader we have to navigate. I think fostering that creativity, fostering those opportunities for your team, where I might engage Made by Things to do a production. And yes, I need you guys to run point on it and take it, but there's an opportunity here where maybe I bring in one of my more junior motion graphics artists and say, hey, you're going to get a seat at the table. You're going to actually be involved in some of the conversations. You might not necessarily be hands on keyboard for this project, but at least you can see the conversations that are going on that you might not necessarily be privy to. And to your point of, I want to be part of that project, or I want to be able to do that. It's a kind of that crawl, walk, run approach, right? Where, hey, this is bigger than what you've necessarily done before. So instead of setting you up for failure, where you're going to just walk in the door and it's not fair for them, let's bring them to the table. Let's see some of the questions. Let's see some of the obstacles that we're facing, so that they go, okay, now I get it. It's not as easy as me just saying, hey, I've got $30,000 for this project. Go figure it out. You don't know what you don't know until you've kind of been in the room and see everything that's going into the production start to finish. And I think, it kind of likens back to that opportunity when you start of being able to touch multiple aspects of production, be the PA, be the grip, be a DP, get your hands dirty and everything so that you have that well-versed foundational knowledge. So when you say, hey, yeah, I'm a motion graphics artist, but I can talk to the cinematographer and say, hey, when you're shooting this, let's make sure we plan for X, Y, and Z so that when I get it in post, it's already solving for what I need. So it's giving those opportunities, and then everything, in a perfect world, everything goes smoothly. And then it's like, next time, okay, maybe we shot something. And now maybe you're part of the edit team and you get to cut pieces of it or a scene or whatever. And it's just kind of broadening their skill set internally that allows them to start to grow their own career. I tell my team all the time, I would love for everyone to stay on my team forever. But the reality of the business is you should want to grow. You should want to move on at some point. Especially in corporate, right? There's only so many levels you can climb internally before you're going to hit a wall. As a leader, my job is to teach you what I know, where ultimately you could either replace me or you go to a place where they need to fill that void, and now you're given that next opportunity.
Right. So speaking of kind of the younger, the up-and-coming people in this creative industry, I believe that there is a lot of some strange pessimism right now when it comes to the idea of why learn all of this stuff when we have all of these new AI tools now. What are your thoughts on that? Like, is this something that is going to completely change everything in a few years, or is this like how should these up and coming artists treat AI, I guess?
I think AI has the potential to be an incredibly powerful tool. But I think it's just that. I think it's a tool. If we're all artists, it just becomes another paintbrush you have in your bag that you can utilize. It's not going to replace you. You need people that can think strategically, that can think intimately about the business, and understand what the client needs. And then, it's the opportunity to, right, like I said, right, I'm a master, or I'm a jack of all trades and master of none. But if I need to storyboard something out, there are tools out there now where it's like, okay, I can give it some prompts and I can kind of generate some ideas. Do I trust it to make a full-fledged video? Absolutely not. And even when it gets to that point, I think it's always going to be missing that human element. I think there's something that we learn from a pacing, cadence, what's the emotive element that we're trying to get behind things that I don't know that AI is going to truly replicate. So I'd encourage people to learn the tools, to understand how to best utilize them. But I don't think it's going to truly replace anything in our industry. Carte blanche. I think there's going to be little pockets here and there, but at the end of the day, I think you're going to need people to help run these things and help guide anything that's being created.
Right. That's kind of my general feeling as well. You kind of say it, from a timing and cadence perspective, like even just looking at like film over the last 50 years and how it has sort of evolved. If we rely on AI, all it's ever going to be able to do is what's been done before. It cannot help us evolve those kinds of things in the future, because that's just not how it works, right? It's how it's built is
Right.
to be able to look back, not necessarily forward.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, Rick, I really appreciate you taking the time. I know we're just kind of scratching the surface of some stuff here, but to finish up here, I would love if you could tell everyone where they can kind of find more out about you.
It's funny. I'm one of those guys that while I work in production, I tend to shy away from social media channels. You can always find me on LinkedIn. Do I keep it updated? Probably not. Are my social channels active? Definitely not. I'm a longtime lurker, but that's about as far as it goes. You can find pictures of my kids. I'm I, I don't know. I find that I try to keep a lot of that private.
Mm-hmm.
I think in a world where everyone knows everything about you, I'm that cusp, right? I think I fall in that, what is that, the Zennial frame range of like, I'm not quite a Gen Z, I'm not quite a millennial, I'm in that weird in between. So I've always been a little cautious of some of those channels.
So what you're saying is don't look me up.
Yeah. I mean, find me on LinkedIn.
I will say that checks out because it is taking us the longest time to be able to get you on this podcast. But I'm so happy to finally get you on here and get you talking about some of this stuff because I don't know, like the experience that you have, how you go about doing your work, I think is truly inspiring to me, and speaking for Shelby as well, because we talk only good things behind your back.
I honestly, I appreciate hearing that. I know that we've had some candid conversations outside of working relationships where, as I look to continue growing in my own career and I partner with outside agencies, what can I be doing better? It's the old adage of never stop learning. I don't think anybody can ever stop improving on themselves. So keep asking the questions, even if it makes you feel like you're in an awkward situation with an agency or a vendor where it's like, hey, what could I be doing better to make your life better? At the end of the day, we're all people. We all have relationships that we're building. And, I know, not to go into the weeds here, but I know I've reached out to both you and Shelby at times. I'm like, hey, I need you to pull a rabbit out of the hat for me, and you guys, 99% of the time, you're like, yeah, okay, we'll figure it out. I'd like to think that's because we have a pretty good working relationship. It's not that I'm just, okay, I'm the client, you have to do what I say. I think I value your expertise that you guys bring to the table.
Yeah.
So I absolutely value hearing that you guys don't absolutely hate working with me.
Listen, okay, I'm going to open this can of worms for just a moment here because, yes, while we are not like an internal team, we do work together quite a bit, but you sort of like you're talking about like just being a good leader and making sure that like you're treating your in-house staff well. That stuff also translate to working with external vendors, right? And when we do get a request of like, hey, we need to pull a rabbit out of a hat, we are excited to be able to have an opportunity to kind of go to bat, right? Because we know that there's tons of times where you've kind of like helped us in the past, right?
Sure.
And it's kind of interesting because like you say, like that relationship is not super common. Maybe it's changing now with the millennial Gen Z kind of, I forgot what you called it.
the Zennials, right?
Zennials, right. Maybe it's changing with some of that, right? But it's interesting how big of an impact that makes, and the relationships that you have and the people that you work with, where if you have a balanced relationship with people, like, yes, sometimes like you have to be demanding we need to get this stuff done. But at the same time, where can you protect and even help or just alleviate some of the pressure for them at times too? Like I'm the same way, and I know you are too, where it's very much like a cup where it's constantly draining and you're managing everyone's cup. Right?
Yep, for sure.
That's the only way I can visualize it. I do this all the time. But I don't know. And I think that like just by doing that stuff makes you a good leader in that position, and being able to manage all these different components going on at any one time. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where a lot of people lose sight from the leadership level. If and I hope that people view me as a decent leader on my team, but we constantly, whether it's the cups, we have a million plates spinning in the air. We are beholden to people above us that don't necessarily understand everything, the nuances of what it takes to get something done. And we're also struggling with our internal teams, looking for those growth opportunities, looking for, you know, hey, I need my next promotion. I need my next raise. I wish I could give everyone $1 million a year. The reality of the business is that's just not the way that the economy works right now. So we do our best to keep all those plates spinning in the air while also being that shield from the top for our team where, you know, the guys below me, they might not know that I just came out of a meeting where I got chewed out for something. It's like you need to flip that switch and be like, yep, it's all sunshine and rainbows over here.
Right.
And I think that just kind of helps keep everyone grounded, keeps us, trying to do our best. I mean, at the end of the day, that's I think what we're all trying to do is do the best job we can do with the tools we're given.
Yep. Okay, real quick, super last question now.
Yeah.
This is a long response, I already know, but one of the other things that we see from you, from experience here, is being able to stay relatively cool under pressure. I mean, it seems like it's a job requirement for the position that you're in at this point. How do you do that?
We can edit this part out, but it's like, is it just a lot of drugs and alcohol? Like, no, but in all seriousness, I think it's, I try to keep it in perspective, right? At the end of the day, we're not brain surgeons. Nobody's going to die on the table if we miss a deadline. Yeah. Is it going to cause an uncomfortable conversation? Yes. But we get to do something that a lot of people envy, right? I jokingly say that, yeah, I make pretty pictures every day. It certainly beats scrubbing toilets, and I think I try to keep that in perspective where, yeah, you can come at me and say that, oh my God, we're all going to get fired if we miss this deadline. Yeah, okay, that's my cross to bear from my team. What I need to do then is turn around and tell my team, like, hey guys, are we going to make it? And I have to trust that they're also professionals and adults, and they also want to do a good job, and nobody's purposely saying, I'm done, I'm not doing it. Now, granted, there are times, but it's ultimately just trying to keep everyone motivated, and then trying to keep yourself realizing that at the end of the day, it's not going to change anything heavily one way or the other. And I think just trying to keep that in perspective keeps you grounded as a leader.
Right. We're all going to die in the end, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's like, yeah, right. Listen, I can pay you $1 million a year, but you're going to die. And what are you going to take with you? Nothing. So
That's true.
it's do something you enjoy. And if you don't enjoy it, find something you do.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it, man. Well, thanks so much, Rick. Like I said, thanks for taking the time to do this. Finally got you on here.
Hey man, I'm happy to have these conversations. I feel like I don't actually have really good things to say. Like I don't,
Not
from
true.
a broader industry perspective, I'm just a drop in the bucket, right? There are people that are so much more talented than me out there. So I appreciate the opportunity to just, here's my soapbox. So thanks for giving me one.
You got it. I don't agree with most of what you just said, but you're welcome.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Always love talking to Rick. He's so humble all the time. Very realistic about some pretty crazy fantasy stuff that we work on sometimes. And he's a great family guy too. And I think I don't know, I think we were able to see all those little sides of him. I don't, again, just I'm always fascinated by anybody that can be a good family member as well as excel in their career at the same time. I don't think that it's as common as people like it to seem, but yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's really interesting. Rick and I have really similar backgrounds, which is fun. And I mentioned that earlier too. 'Cause he went to film school and then like wasn't exactly sure what he was going to do, but like it's just that thing of I'm going to ride the wave and see kind of what comes at me. And I really appreciate that kind of outlook. And especially to be riding that wave, but also to be able to have that really good balance, that work-life balance. So usually it's kind of like a little mutually exclusive. So a tremendous amount of respect for that. But I love being able to talk to Rick. it's always a good conversation.
Yep. One of the things that he said that probably stood out most to me is kind of this idea of professionals plan, right?
Yeah.
We kind of talked about it a bit during the episode of like, it's real easy to just jump in there and just make things happen.
Mm-hmm.
But a professional knows when it's not time to start working on something, right?
Yeah.
There's that difference of like making sure that the knives are sharp, or the Lincoln quote of if I have 2 hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend an hour and a half sharpening the axe, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really love that, as well as, and this is something that we've had this kind of ongoing conversation about, of the difference between in-house and agency.
Yeah.
And the pros and cons to both of those things. Truly, I think that everybody pretty much always wants to be on the other side of things, right? Sorry. Choking over here. It very much is the grass is always greener. When you are in-house, you have stability, but when you are with agency, you generally can push yourself creatively to just a different level altogether. And, you know, in an ideal world, you probably have both of those things, but I don't know. I'm not sure those really exist all the time. It's been tough for me anyway to see in my career anybody that can have best of both worlds there. But
yeah, it's a lot of it too. Rick's leadership and his ability to speak on that and know like when it's okay to be the person, you know, when it's okay to hop in, when the work should start. I think comes into the fact that he has kind of worked at all these different levels in kind of many different kinds of studios. I mean, news, it's incredibly fast paced. I mean, working in a studio setting, working then more in that corporate setting of, you know, working with one brand. Because he's been able to work on so many different levels, it makes him a very good leader. And he mentioned that too, and it's something that I really believe in, is that he was talking about when he got into more of a producing role, that you should work below the line to be good at working above the line. And that I 100% agree with, is you're not going to be a good leader, you're not going to be a good producer unless you've actually done the thing. I feel really similarly. It was something that when I was in college, I was studying a lot of film theory, because I thought, again, it's riding the wave. I thought I was going to be a film theorist, and I wanted to learn the other side of it, actually learn production, because you can't talk about it unless you've actually done it, unless you know what it is. Otherwise, you're just guessing. So when you're a producer, it's so important to have worked. Maybe you weren't an animator, but you've worked in a similar position. Maybe you weren't a designer, but again, you've worked in a similar position. You know what the process is like. You know what it's like to be being told what to do as an artist. But being in that position, you know, helps you be a better leader down the line and be able to recognize how that process really should flow.
yeah, for sure. I mean, I think a lot about kind of my own position and sort of like how I ended up here. It's weird because, you know, you say that you and Rick had a similar path. And for me, I'm like, I feel like I was very targeted and like very I don't know if aggressive is the right word, but like just very like directional, I guess, where I'm like, all right, this is exactly what I want, and I'm just going to do these things that kind of get me to this thing that I want. And that's another one of those things where in my head I would have skipped all of these things. Like I would have skipped a lot of stuff that I would have had to have known, but like you just couldn't, right? Like there's no, it's not like Chutes and Ladders where you get to land on a ladder and all of a sudden you're all the way up there, right? Like you have to work your way up there, and it's purposeful on why you have to do that, so you can learn all the little things that you need to know on your way to that thing. When you finally become that person, you have to know all of these different things, right? Yeah, love that. That's all I got.
Awesome. That's all I got. Well, another thank you to Rick for being on the show. Another great conversation. And I'm just going to put a little note out that we will be going on pause for a little bit. This is the last episode for a couple of weeks or so. Holidays are here, so we're going to take a little break. We're going to shut the studio down and have our own little work-life balance for a little bit.
For just a week.
Just a week. Yeah. We have 1 week. Be with your family for that week.
Yeah, and then at that point, you can see him again next Christmas.
Yeah. But yeah, so we're gonna come back soon with more episodes. Maybe we'll do a little recap for everyone, and we'll be hitting the ground running in 2025. That's cool. But until then, stay magical, everybody. Content Alchemy is presented by Made by Things. To learn more about us, check out madebythings.com. And if you have a topic you'd like us to discuss, send us a message at alchemy@madebythings.com.